Hi guys, my name's James and welcome to our brand new channel called The Lore Masters, where we focus on competitive Disney Lorcana, where we're going to bring you deck profiles, we're going to give you gameplay, and just generally anything about the competitive metagame when it comes to Disney Lorcana. So today I'm bringing you a special deck that I built myself. It's Steel Amethyst Board Control. If you just want the deck list and you just want to kind of give it a go yourself, I'll leave it in the description below, so just be sure to have a look at that. But if you want to see how it's played or why I've chosen certain cards, then stick around and I'll explain. So we'll do the characters first. So first up we've got Elsa, Snow Queen. So Elsa's got the ability so she can exert herself to exert chosen opposing character. Now, this is useful in this deck in particular because if your opponent is not wanting to either quest or challenge with their card because they want to protect it, so in a lot of the cases of Aurora or Stitch Rockstar, they don't want to attack with it, you can exert it and then it is now vulnerable to attack, which is very, very important because it keeps your opponent's board clear, and as long as you're ahead on board, you'll generally win the game. So very, very useful card in this deck. So next thing is Captain Hook, Forceful Duelist. Very useful when you're attacking because it goes to 3 power. Not so good when it's on the defense because it's only got 2. So it will generally lose to other 1-drops, so you need to be careful about when you're attacking with this card. But it is quite useful when your opponent's got an exerted character with a high toughness. You can generally give this card rush and attack with it, generally trade up to a more expensive character. Very useful card. I absolutely recommend playing 4 copies of it, especially because it's a 1-drop. Now, one of the cards that I consider to be the best in the game revealed so far is Pascal. If you've never seen Pascal before, it's while you have another character in play, this character gains evasive. Now, the reason why this is useful is this deck plays a lot of cheap characters anyway, but evasive is a keyword ability that is only on generally expensive cards. I think the cheapest card with evasive is 5 cost. So when you play this card early, you're going to be questing with it a lot, and your opponent is not going to be able to challenge it. And thus far, evasive is not the most played keyword so far because the cards are so expensive. So there's a good chance if your opponent doesn't play cheap removal, this card is going to stay on the board for most of the game and get you a lot of lore simply just by questing every single turn. There's been games where me and my opponent have been at a standstill because neither one of us want to attack or quest because we'd lose the board. So Pascal's just sitting there questing away and working towards your win condition. Absolutely amazing card. I think it will see a lot of play even when the full set is released. Okay, which brings us on to Mickey Mouse, Wayward Sorcerer. I'm not overly convinced with this card, but so far with all the cards that have been spoiled, there isn't a lot of card advantage in the game so far, so you've got to use what you've got. So if you've never seen this card before, it's you pay 1 less ink to play Broom characters, and whenever one of your Broom characters is banished in a challenge, you may return that card to your hand. Now, it doesn't necessarily that Broom has to be killed when you're attacking, it can be your opponent attacking it, and you get it back to hand. So it's quite a safe thing to attack with or quest with, because while Mickey's on the board, you're just going to get it back to your hand. I find it very useful if you give the Broom Rush, which we can in this deck, because you can crash it into your opponent's character, return the Broom back to your hand, and replay it. If you've got several ways of giving Rush in a turn, you can do this multiple times. But yeah, it's very useful to have. I'm not sure whether it will still be included in the deck once the full set is revealed. I guess we'll find out. Obviously, without the Broom, that Mickey would be pointless. So when you play this character, you may shuffle a card from your discard into its player's deck. Now, you can use this either offensively or defensively. So you can either shuffle back one of your opponent's dead cards. So if they're playing blue and they're using a lot of ramp cards like a jump ahead, you can put one of those back into their deck, so they essentially dead draw late game. Or if you've got a useful card that you want to put back in your deck, you can as well. So if they kill your Elsa, for example, and you know you need it, you can put it back. it just goes with the Mickey. Like I say, you can give it rush, attack into something, put it back in your hand, replay it. It's just infinitely recurable while you've got the Mickey on the board, so it's worth an inclusion. But like I said, with the Mickey, I'm not sure whether it will see an inclusion once the full set's released. Okay. This was a late addition to the deck. It used to be the Wardrobe, because the Wardrobe had a good stat line of 3 attack and 4 toughness. Hercules has Bodyguard, so while it's exerted, your opponent has to attack it instead. The reason why this is useful is sometimes your weaker characters have to quest or attack, and they're likely to kind of die on the defense because they don't have the highest defense in the world. So you want to put Hercules there to protect it. A lot of the times I play this when I want to protect my Elsa, because while Elsa's on the board, you're always going to be ahead of your opponent because you can just keep attacking them. So yeah, it's quite useful. I wish it was a little bit cheaper. But, you know, it serves a purpose. It's a free with Bodyguard. It's the cheapest Bodyguard card we have so far, but it's worth the inclusion so far. Okay, the next thing is Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger. So this card reads, when you play this character, you may return an action card named Fire the Cannons from your discard to your hand. We play 4 copies of Fire the Cannons in this deck, so it's very useful to keep recurring it. So in total, we run essentially 6 copies of Fire the Cannons. I used to play more copies of this card, but because it is non-inkable, and if you don't see Fire the Cannons really early, it becomes a very dead draw. 2 copies is absolutely fine. You generally want to try and mulligan for Fire the Cannons early, but yeah, a very useful card to have. Right, the next one is Prince Eric, Dashing and Brave. This card has Challenger +2, so it goes to free attack when it attacks it. So it's quite useful to play on turn 2, if your turn 1 is Pascal. Because it's free toughness, it's very difficult to kill, because there's nothing in the game that can just flat out kill a free toughness character. Again, if you're exerting things with Elsa, you can attack them with Prince Eric and go to free attack. You can generally trade up. Is this very good if your opponent has a 2-drop with 2 attack and 3 toughness, because you can kill that and Prince Eric will still live. So quite a useful character to have. Again, quite weak on the defense though, because it's only got 1 attack itself. Right, next card is Dr. Facilier. This card I'm not completely sold on, mainly because it has 0 attack. So when it's on the defense, your opponent can just kill it and not get damaged themselves. But it has Challenger 2 and 4 toughness. So essentially when it's attacking, it's a 2 attack, 4 toughness character, which can take out multiple characters. But in all honesty, as soon as a card that comes out replaces it, he probably will get taken out. Just because that 0 attack, sometimes you can't defend this guy, and he generally ends up as ink. But he serves a purpose for now, so he's in the deck. Right, Jafar, Wicked Sorcerer. One of the better cards in the deck, mainly because he goes up to 5 attack when he does attack. So things like Aurora Dream Guardian has 5 toughness, Rockstar Stitch has 5 toughness. Excuse me. So when he attacks, he does go up to that power and can single-handedly kill them with that. But he also has 5 toughness himself, so he does take quite a lot of beating over to kind of kill him as well. So you can either play this on turn 4 and exert one of your opponent's characters on your next turn and attack over it, or you can give him rush the turn he comes in and attack over something big. Very useful to have, good stat line on him. So, and the fact he's a common is very, very good as well. Okay, and lastly is Maleficent Sorceress. So she's a free cost. When she enters the board, you may draw a card. Very useful to replace itself. There's not many cards when it enters you get to draw a card. So even if your opponent uses removal on this card, it's not a big deal, because you've already replaced itself. Plus that, it can help you dig for better cards or dig for your items that you need to kind of continue in the game. So yeah, she's definitely worth an inclusion. She's also a very good target for Friends from the Other Side. So you can draw with this card, then Friends from the Other Side. You can tap to draw 2. Very useful to have. And yeah, I think she'll see a lot of play, especially when the set comes out as well, just purely because she does replace herself. Right, so that's all the characters. So let's move on to the action cards now. So we play 4 copies of Fire the Cannons, which we can recur with Hook, the 4-drop Hook. So we do in total play potentially 6 copies of Fire the Cannons. This is the cheapest removal in the game so far. Just dealing 2 damage to a character for 1 is very good, because together with the other removal card we play, we can do this. Or if one of our smaller guys attacks into someone bigger, we can finish them with Fire the Cannons. But it's just very, very good removal just to keep control of the board. I think this will continue to see a lot of play when the set comes out, unless there is better removal. But it seems unlikely. It's a very, very good card, and the fact that you can recur it with the Captain Hook, yeah, it's very, very good. Right, Smash. So this is 3 damage to a chosen character for 3 ink. It's not the strongest card in the world compared to Fire the Cannons, but it's another removal card for straight up removal. It's quite nice that Smash plus Fire the Cannons equals 5 damage. So I keep mentioning Aurora because I think she'll see play when the set fully comes out, but also Stitch as well. It means they don't even need to be exerted for you to attack them. So it's just nice having these removal options. Plus it is inkable, so if you do get it early game and you don't think you're going to need it, just ink it so you can play your characters. It's quite useful. Right, we only play the 1 song, but 4 copies of it, which is Friends on the Other Side. So a character with cost 3 or more can sing this song for free, draw 2 cards. So it's almost like a Pot of Greed from Yu-Gi-Oh! You can use your Elsa, you can use your Jafar, you can use Maleficent, you can use Hercules, and his bodyguard will still work. If you don't want to exert any of your characters because you don't want them to be vulnerable to attack, you can just simply pay the free ink just to draw the 2 cards. Very useful, and the fact it's a common as well is very good. I think this will continue to see a lot of play when the set comes out as well. Very, very cool card. Okay, which brings us to our last 2 bits. First is Magic Mirror. I used to play Beast's Mirror over this card, but sometimes you were getting uninkable cards in your hand, and you weren't actually able to activate Beast's Mirror because you need an empty hand. So this does cost 1 more ink to draw a card, but when you get to late game and you're trading resources with your opponent, sometimes you run out of cards. This keeps you in the game, because you're essentially drawing 2 cards a turn, and you've got quite a lot of ink from what you've built up, so it's useful to turn those into cards. Generally, you should be playing some form of card that lets you draw late game to turn your ink resources into cards. I think those, especially now, will win you the game over anything. They might not be so useful when the full set's released if we get more draw cards, but at the moment they're very useful. So I run 2 copies of this. I wouldn't run any more because it is uninkable. You don't want to have a lot of dead cards in your hand. And finally, the last item, which is White Rabbit's Pocket Watch. So if you've never seen this card before, you can exert this card and pay 1 ink. Chosen character gains Rush, which means they can challenge the turn they're played. So if your opponent, say like your opponent clears your board and they quest with their character, you can play one of your characters while this is on board and give it Rush and then attack. This is very useful when you've got things like Jafar. So if your opponent thinks they're safe and they can swing with their Aurora or their Stitch, you just play your Jafar, give it Rush, attack over it. Your Jafar is alive, their character has gone. It creates very good board control. That's why there's 4 copies of it in this deck, because you play a lot of cards that gain additional attack when they do attack. So it just keeps your board in control and keeps your opponents empty. Bear in mind that just because they get rushed, they can't quest the turn they come in, nor can they use their tap abilities like Elsa. It is only purely challenging. But like I say, it's very useful to, say, exert something with Elsa, play one of your cheaper characters, give it Rush, attack it. That's right. So that's overall, that is all the deck. We're going to be showing the Amber Sapphire Stitch next, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and I'll make sure that you get that. But I'm also going to be recording some gameplay with this, so you can kind of see it in action. So yeah, be sure to stick around for more content from the Lore Masters. Cheers guys, bye!